Hey, thanks for jumping into the Weekend Rewind. Today's an episode I recorded on the First Time Facilitator podcast with Scott Armstrong. And what I really like about Scott's work is that his enemy is default, is life defaulting. And even on his website, we don't accept life's defaults. We are looking for something much better. And that's what this conversation is aiming to promote. It's really around how to find your passion pivot and how do you prepare for your work optional life, formerly known as retirement. So he's retired the phrase retirement. Anyway, I'll stop there. You'll hear his bio in this one. Enjoy the episode and I'll speak to you tomorrow.
And now, your host.
Her favourite cartoon growing up was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Leanne Hughes.
I'm still a generalist, and every day I try to think about what it is I want to focus on and become an expert on. It's like, what do I want to be when I grow up? So it was really amazing getting on today's guest and talking to him about things like career pivots, how to find your passion and purpose, and more. And this is from a guy that has not only pivoted careers, but I believe he's done complete 180-degree transformations into different career lines. His name is Scott Armstrong. He's Canadian, and he started his career as a corporate banker who was deeply frustrated and knew that there had to be more than just pushing paper. Who here agrees with that? I'm certainly putting my hand up. You might be virtually as well. Now, he went on to work at Canada's largest rehabilitation centre for abandoned exotic animals. In this episode, we talk about what left him to pivot and his fascination with getting others to lead limitless lives. So if you are soul searching, if you're listening to this episode, you're driving into work feeling like you're stuck in the rat race and what's the whole point of all of this, you'll find this interview and Scott's work very appealing. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to meet you, Leanne.
I always talk to my guests about the pivots that brought them into the world of facilitation and speaking, but you talk about passion pivot. So I was wondering if you could share your story with our listeners on how you discovered what you do now through a series of pivots.
Yeah, and it is a series of pivots because I've done something not too many people have done. I started out in finance and banking and soon realized it was not the right vibe for me. So I went away to Hawaii, about 30 years ago, and said, if I could do anything that I wanted to do, pie in the sky thinking, no constraints, you're in your 20s, all is incredibly possible. And I thought to myself, what would I like to do? And I came up with working with animals. So what I ended up doing was creating Canada's largest endangered animal sanctuary for things like lions and tigers, snakes and owls, and totally pivoted right out of my shoes, if you will, into a new life.
That is a massive, do you even call that a pivot? That's like a huge sort of leap change. So you've been working with animals. Good on you. I absolutely love animals, and I love that you're helping protect endangered species as well. How is that linked into the work that you're doing today?
Well, what it did was first of all, your listeners have already crossed this bridge, the fear of public speaking. That helped me cross that. But there's something different when you are on stage with a mountain lion or something as sensitive as a tawny owl or whatever it is. You have to read body language. Animals don't speak. And so what that really helped me do was when I get in front of an audience, as my career went on, I was able to notice things about people in the audience that a lot of people didn't catch on. I said, did you really see that they sort of checked out 20 minutes ago? And they go, how do you know that? And, I think it's just from watching body language with the animals for so long that I could pick up when people were engaged with the topic, when they're disappointed, when they're angry, when they're not feeling connected. And that allowed me to, while in the session, react and sort of help bring them back into it.
And that is a real superpower, being able to sort of read and understand what people are thinking. Let's talk about the question, though, that you asked yourself when you were in Hawaii, and what an inspirational place Hawaii is. Still on my bucket list. I haven't been there yet. So that question of, if I could do anything, what would it be? Now, what I tend to find is, because I've worked in corporate, I just left corporate last year. I sort of walked around the dark corridors and you see people hunched in these cubicles and you think, I don't think they're living their potential. I don't think they're doing what they were born to do. They don't seem that excited and fueled by that spreadsheet in front of them or that meeting they're attending. Why do you think there's all these people around that aren't living their potential or even being brave enough to ask themselves the question that you asked yourself?
Let's take 2 hours to really talk about this because that's how deep it goes. But the Coles Notes version of it would be that I think most people are reactive in life. Even my daughter, who's 25, gifted intellect, talent, and things like that. But she's just taking what's coming towards her as opposed to taking charge of her life and sort of guiding it. So I think number one is a lot of people are reactive that when they get a good paying job out of university or just starting, that's enough for them to try it out. And then the slow tendrils of security and bills and all the things that can trap somebody in a place can take hold. So why do most people don't live to their potential? Because potential is not the first thing you usually bump across when you come out of school, or if ever in your career. You actually have to, generally speaking, be active in that search.
And so what's a good first step someone can take if they're listening in now, they've climbed the corporate ladder and they're thinking, uh-oh, I'm the person that Leanne's talking about. What next step could they take?
The dogma of the thinking is go something like this, follow your passion. And the research that I've done is that, the vast majority of people, when it comes to finding a passion, they have a very vague idea or they have no idea at all. And so to say to someone, please follow your passion, I can't tell you the number of times people go, I just don't know what it is, because our identity's been so wrapped around their corporate careers, those types of things. And for those that do know, they haven't thought about it in terms of, how do I make a living out of this? What does speaking and teaching facilitation actually look like? How do I make money so this doesn't become one of those 6-month passion projects that leaves you, financially weakened and, not really a safe place to crawl back to. So one of the first things I would suggest is get really good habits about exploring what you would think you would like to be. So think of that, a transition, a sidestep slightly to the left, pragmatically. And while friends are out having fun on a Saturday morning, hiking or something like that, you're taking a couple of hours and you're exploring what that might actually look like, this career, and finding business models that might support you. What I speak on is how people can approach retirement with a refire mentality rather than a retire mentality. And I found some people in my industry, or in the industry, who've been doing it for 20 years, and they have found some of those answers. So the short answer to what you just asked is start developing those habits that help you explore. If you do the same that everybody else does, expect the same results. Your habits and how you use your time become really important.
That's right. And I was talking to a previous guest, Near Ale. We were talking about your values are actually demonstrated by your time. So what he said is, if you value your relationships, but you can look in your calendar and you're not actually spending time on relationships, then that's not really representing what your values are. So I guess what you're saying is, if you want to make the change and find something else, you've got to take that time to do it and go through that process. And
oh, you do. I wish I could show your audience my office here, because right in front of me I have this huge mirror, and on it are the 6 values of self-awareness, courage, fun, positivity, relationship, and growth. So that every time I'm working in something, they're there in my face. And the one other piece you just mentioned there is the friendship piece. The one habit that we often talk about, at least I talk about when I'm in front of folks, is the power of your posse. And so that if you're looking to make a change and you're surrounded by people who are staying the same, it doesn't actually feed a lot of your momentum. So we even talk about it, a possectomy, which is just basically sometimes friends fade in and out of your life, and you've got to invite new blood in if you want to do new things. I don't know, I hope that doesn't sound overly harsh, but I think we've all experienced that.
Yes. And I tell you what, that's the beauty of podcasting and listening to podcasts, because I was in this corporate world where I was looking around and everyone's motivated just to climb the ladder, and I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't want to buy into that. Then I started finding these podcasters who were, people that were speaking for a living, that were creating passive income, and they were my new sort of posse. But just going back to what you said, the possectomy, that's cool. You also talked about refire versus retire. So you got a really great way with language and using some cool words and great lingo. Where did you come up with all of these words? When do they just do you have a shower and you go, oh, there's a great word? Where do these phrases come from?
Actually, in the shower, I have those writable tiles, and I do have a marker that, when I have an idea, I can write it in the shower. I'm sure some of you folks have that as well. And it may be just too much information for people to have, but you never know when inspiration is going to find you. But if you would ask my wife and my kids, they'll tell you I have my own dictionary and or language or colloquialisms that come out. So I think it's because I just say a feeling without trying to put it into mapped out words ahead of time. Sometimes I come up with those kinds of things. So that's as deep as I want to go with that, because I think if I go any deeper, I'll probably scare myself.
But it's good. It's a good point, though. I've got a notepad and a pen in my car. When I listen to something, when I'm sort of driving, that's when I get inspiration. So Let's talk about the refiring again. And one of the reasons I was sort of drawn to talk to you is because you do work with athletes. You've worked with high performance athletes who they give up their sport. And you mentioned this before, that their identity is tied to what they do. And sometimes they've got to find this new identity when they leave. Otherwise, there can be all sorts of sort of drama. So how do you sort of start that process with someone who is transitioning and has wrapped an identity around what they do?
Athletes are probably an extreme example because a lot of times, I deal with professional American football players. They are very much in a prescribed regiment when you're a professional athlete. You've got coaches telling you what to play. You've got health experts telling you what to eat, when to eat. So you don't have to do an awful lot of individual thinking when you are a professional athlete, in the sense that your life is pretty much revolved around the sport for the duration of your season, and you're taken care of. I think that's the big message. You're taken care of. And so I guess in the corporate world, the company takes care of you. And then all of a sudden players are going, well, I'm a star. People love me. Why would I worry about transitioning? Well, the average lifespan of a football player in Canada is 4.2 years, and 35% of them are bankrupt. And this isn't just Canadian football. This is US, 35% bankruptcy after 5 years of retirement. And it doesn't matter if you're making, $100,000 a year or $5 million, the bankruptcy still follows you. So it is a tough market to get them to think about changing, because they've been told they've been great their whole lives. And to get that humility element of transitioning out becomes a tough piece. So going from, how do we do that? Well, while they're playing, today, actually, we had a broadcast with a financial expert on here today, talk about how they can improve their spending habits and tax seasons up here. So can we, top up our savings accounts, RSPs, that type of stuff, and just start offering them some easy fixes for themselves so that they can start buying into, there's more for me to learn. And I think that's a big thing for all of us, is that if you are thinking about that transition to identity, you have to be open to learning, which is obvious. But the other piece is opening to be vulnerable, because a lot of people we find in the corporate world, they could be manager, director, VP, president. There's a lot of satisfaction with that, a power feeling with that, dare I say, ego with that. And the thought of actually going into a place where, you don't have all the answers, people aren't going to dance in front of you when you ask them to, that requires a little bit of a shift that way. So to start getting them to shift that way is to start helping them paint that picture. What does life look like, in 5 years out, 10 years? And I'm sure you went through that kind of thing. We're after a long-term journey to get to a goal that we'll probably never get to, but we're really setting up a journey of success for ourselves along the way. So that's usually part of the thing for a pro athlete, is we'll say, most players retire at 28. You've got to work another 30 years. So what are some of the things that you'd be thinking about doing? What's one of the most popular transitions?
Tell me.
Pilots. There is such a worldwide shortage of commercial pilots who are making, $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and they've lowered the entrance requirements. So anybody who's listening and loves travel, I'm not saying this is a lifestyle for you, but you start helping them see what could be possible, and show them pathways of other folks who perhaps left the security. I left the bank when mortgage rates were 11.75%, and I had a 3% mortgage, and I was making $60,000 a year, which was 30 years ago. So that was a lot of money. And I was talking to a lot of people who said, "Don't do this." Everyone thought I was just absolutely bonkers to do it. And I talked to a couple of folks who not only had started to do it, but had endured it long enough to have some success.
So you did like a postectomy on yourself, like you made sure that you got the opinions of other people. That's it. Because you're right. And that's, like I was saying, back in corporate, everyone thought I was weird. And then I started thinking maybe I am. But then you start getting other people's opinions. You open up to that opportunity. I love that with the professional footballers, you go through like a visioning process of what you want your life to look like in 5 to 10 years. I know when I played sport, do you have netball in Canada?
Yeah, I know what netball is.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I played netball at a pretty high level, and I did a lot of visioning as part of that. So visioning like the goal going through the hoop. And so that's a really great skill to have as an athlete, and to use that muscle to then vision your future is very powerful.
Yes. And it's interesting when you think about leaving the corporate world, it can be a real scary kind of feeling. And I realized that, I could ask my fellow bankers, what did they think? Well, they're all working for the bank. they're entrenched in it. They're not the people that I want to ask. So I do like support, but I like supportive arguments or discussions around it from people who've actually stepped out of normal, because I don't think normal is all that good. I think you would agree too. You're charting your own path, and if you're a facilitator, you are charting a niche market in here. So you listen to everybody, but some people will have a better understanding of what you're trying to do, and it's those folks that I paid particular attention to.
Yeah, you've got to be quite discerning in who you decide to follow. That's for sure. Now, you mentioned niche market, and another question I get from a lot of facilitators and speakers is, which is surprising because I haven't got this figured out just yet, is I can facilitate anything. I can facilitate leadership workshops, team development workshops, conflict, anything. So how do I know what to focus on? What would you say to that, Scott?
I've been there. I have been there. I was recently asked to facilitate a strategic planning session for the BC Wine Institute. So we have a reasonably sized wine industry in BC, nothing like Australia, but large. And I guess when you can facilitate anything, then you're never viewed as the expert. And so a couple things will pop to my mind. Some of them will be more traditional in thought, and others perhaps a little bit less. When you niche yourself, such as say you facilitate strategic planning board meetings and kind of stuff, you become an expert in that. In Canada and the US anyways, your rate goes up considerably for the same amount of time. You can get $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a day for doing that if you are an expert. And if a company of any size will only hire an expert, so you have to be able to specialize in that market space. If they go to your website and say, yes, I do facilitation, and it's point 4 on my website after keynotes, trainings, and workshops, the branding won't be there for me to get selected unless I get personally referred type of thing. So number one is, what do you need your business to do in a pragmatic sense to keep you alive and well? And then number two is, there's some things I think we all really enjoy doing, and others, perhaps not as much in terms of audience composition. It could be in terms of content. If you've got a passion for something in the facilitation realm, I have, a huge passion for helping folks 45 not just fall off the vine and slowly, go into their senior years type of stuff. I would do it, and I do it without getting paid sometimes because I just want to do that. But the key thing is that people sense that passion. They know I go deeper into my homework there, and I come to them full on, and that gets around. And then all of a sudden you're getting really good compensation and good contracts and opportunities. If it was just one of the 5 or 6 things that I do, I'd probably get 1 or 2 a year. But, conventional thinking, and I happen to agree with it here, the more you can niche yourself as an expert in something. There's a great book by Cal Newport. It's Make Yourself So Good They Can't Ignore You, or something like that. And it's developing that expertise in that one area. It does not mean that you won't do training in another area, something that might come as an ancillary or side kind of piece. But I think niching is one of the things that has helped my business grow as quickly as it has.
Yes, I agree with that. I guess a follow-up question to that is, how long did it take you to discover that the 45 plus market was your market? Was it a series of experiments, or?
I would love to tell you I'm that intelligent who can design an experiment. I'm just a guy who works really hard. I'm not. So what I found was, one of my other clients, other than the professional footballers, was different companies, military. And when the guys and gals were retiring from military service, I would go in and act as a transition speaker for them to start their own businesses, because entrepreneurship is my wheelhouse. And so, I found a lot of them were in that age range, Leanne. They were in that 45, 50, 40 range. And at that point, I liked it because they were compulsory work. It wasn't quite done, but was almost done. And that allowed them to breathe a little bit. A lot of their kids were, out of their houses. So it's a different kind of stage in life. And there's a freedom that comes around that. And when I'm dealing with those in their 30, 35, and 40, generally speaking, that kids are at home, the university's still got to be paid for, the mortgage is there, and there's a much more pragmatic, and there needs to be, I was that way, mindset around life at that point in time. So that exposure to the military, was certainly a piece. And then I started a group called Adventure 50. This was 10 years ago. And what we did was crazy outdoor adventures that you wouldn't find people 50-ish. And, I'm 57 now, doing, and we had up here, I think you have in Oz too, there was Tough Mudder races or Spartan races and all these things that were designed for 20 and 30 somethings. And we were going out and doing that. We were camping out in the back of the Serengeti doing volunteer work with villages. And we were supposed to be the ones who were in the luxury hotels and things like that. So I just found that peeling back the veneer of optics on that group, it was just incredible energy that I got. So that's how I arrived at this market space.
Brilliant. And I think it's great that you said you're just human. You didn't design these experiments. It's more about sort of meeting demand, again, connecting with the audience that you like working with, asking yourself, why is that particular audience, why am I compelled to help them? And I love that you sort of broke down the demographic and said, well, this group over 50s, they've got more freedom to be able to do these cool things that you want to do. I'd love to see your group crash a Kentucky trip. That would be awesome.
My daughter was going on a Kentucky trip, and I said, how about if I try to do that? Little makeup and, make me look a little 35 and under, because I did the Kentucky trip. Boy, that was a ton of fun. I don't know if I have that same level of energy, going forward. But,
no.
And what you said too about demographics, and I use the term sometimes psychographics, it's the value-based decisions that this marketplace, the 45 plus, makes that are really intriguing to me. So for the folks who are listening to this is, really understand what your values are as a facilitator and as a person. And you'll find, that you light up in front of certain audiences because you just resonate with them on a value level. And it's sort of like you can't do enough for them. And I think if you plant yourself in that kind of market space and there's some money for it, then you're off to a really good start. But it may not be that final place because you may bump up to things. I didn't go after professional athletes. I had to go through military athletes, and then a couple of professional athletes attended one of our sessions, and that became the market space. So I think just sometimes having momentum is a really good thing. And the last piece before I finish my monologue here, and I'm so sorry, is obviously I'm excited about doing is for facilitators to do the minimum viable product, like get out and just test it. We have a workshop now. It's called the Battle of the Bands. And when we start it, we bring in 2 piles of junk and we put them on the table. And each of the groups has 15 minutes to make instruments out of the junk and then perform. It's sort of like, wow, where did that come from? And that's opened up another really enjoyable market space in terms of, you're going to ask, one of your questions sometimes is, what's your favorite icebreaker kind of stuff? Well, that just gets people's music feelings going and creativity pieces going. And it's many pivots along the way and I'm not sure, I don't think you ever really finished.
I don't think you're ever really finished, which is great. Life is a constant journey of learning. And that Battle of the Bands, that is such a cool idea. Thank you for sharing that. So in terms of your workshop, so that's a really neat activity that you spoke about. How else do you prepare for an upcoming workshop? Or we'll talk about workshops first. Actually, it'd be interesting to see if you do things differently for keynotes as well. Like, is there a different process for keynotes versus workshops, or do you prepare in the same way?
The preparation will be fairly similar. The difference I'll do with a workshop is I'm a big advocate, or I understand that there's different stakeholders within a keynote. So we'll talk to the event coordinator who may be representing a company. I'll talk to somebody in the company. And then I will see if, I can put together a survey and mail out an electronic survey and just ask a couple of 2 or 3 light questions on something. So I get a sense of who's in the audience. And, I can do that for the keynote. The one addition I would add when I do a workshop is, because my background, and serendipitously over the years, I've become known as the sales guy. I understand how to connect with people and put deals together. So I do that with my audiences. I do a needs analysis. So you're sitting in my audience there. Some of the first lines after the Battle of Bands is, I hate being bored. Anybody on the side with me that? And hands go up. I say, so listen, when we're done, in X number of hours here today, how do you know it's been a good day for you? Tell me. And, then we'll just get people, yelling out things that they'd like to see covered. And a lot of time they're on the mark. A lot of time they're not. But at least they're now seeing themselves, envisioning themselves in the workshop through the day, that there's something they're waiting for to be answered. And it often creates dialogue amongst themselves. So that would be one of the different prep pieces that I do for a workshop versus a keynote. Obviously, the usual stuff, get there early, the tech check. Sometimes with a keynote, you can't really do an awful lot with the setup that's there. But with a workshop, sometimes you can get there and, tables. I was doing one in Edmonton, which is a city here in Northern Canada, and the Governor General was going to be attending. That's the Queen's representative.
Yeah.
So I'm there, and I found out there was a 20-foot gap between the edge of the stage and the first table. And, when there's only 100 people in there, that's a huge vacuum. You don't want that. It's just too far away. You lose that intimacy of proximity. And so, we ended up moving all the tables up because we got there early. We had enough time to make sure that all the aesthetics of the environment are working there as well. So those are some of the big hitting items that I like to do, to prepare for a meeting. I get there early so that, when people are coming in, I start having conversations. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners do that as well, so that I've got some friendly eyes in the audience. We've shared some personal stories and things like that. It just acts as an accelerator for getting everybody on board.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with getting in early, getting comfortable, meeting a few people. With the Governor General speech that you did, were you extra nervous for that? Or what was your self-talk going into that one where you were like, oh my gosh, the Governor General? Because I certainly would be.
Yeah. The answer would be no. The head of the military was very nervous because there was protocols that were to be in place. But I've presented to enough dignitaries, not enough because you never are, but that they're there for the optics. So I was just very excited. I knew of this Governor General. She was a lovely lady, very supportive of the Canadian military. So I was just more nervous about following the right protocols of how you greet her, and, it's how you, shake her hand, and you don't just dominate her, her time, that kind of stuff. But it was exciting for sure. Absolutely exciting.
Just something a little bit extra to consider, I guess, those formalities. I have to quickly ask you, because you told us that you are the sales guy. So a lot of people here listening have their own facilitation business, and key question is, how do I get more sales? Now, I know we don't have time to explore this, but this is like a huge question.
Yes.
Is there a tip? Is it like a mindset, something practical? What would you say?
Yeah, practical things. One is it takes 8 to 12 touch points for a business-to-business sale to close. So I think a lot of people give up too early. When you reach out to a company and, you submit a proposal and, you answer a couple of questions and they come back no, and then we tend to let it go. Well, I always view selling as a long-term relationship. And yes, I may not be on your stage this year. Yes, I may not get the gig this year, but I'm going to keep that conversation open. And I see so many people when I take a look at their funnel, I go, well, you didn't get this one. So where did you follow up? And they go, well, I didn't. Because they haven't got it systematized. And at the back of the mind, the practical point is that 8 to 12 touch points of phone conversations, emails, face-to-face meetings, they need to know, like, and trust you before they often book you. And that can take months, if not a year or two.
I completely agree. I think it is absolutely a long game. And I think if you try and go for sort of short game direct, it's difficult. That's what I'm finding. And even sometimes where I've sent out a proposal like a year ago, it's a year to this week that I was a solopreneur, that I've been one.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to celebrate. Yeah, some people, like, you sent a proposal months ago and they finally get back to you. So I like the phrase, it's not a no, it's just a not yet. I think that's really smart.
Yeah. And they're not saying no to you. So when you talked about mindset a little while ago, very rarely are they saying no to you. It's not a right fit at the moment. Last year, I applied to speak at the Ontario Humane Society, so Canada's biggest province, and they were having their annual meeting of humane societies taking care of animals. And what a great fit. I was so passionate for this one. And, I submitted, I even don't ever do this. I'm sure you've never had, but don't cut your price just because you like something. And I just so wanted it. I included the travel. I said, I will do this, because I just wanted to contribute, and I didn't get the gig. And, so, I pinged them again in the fall. I know they've got another one coming up in this June. And today they actually emailed me and said, not today, yesterday, to be totally truthful. Do you do anything on leadership, Scott? And, I had to think about the question you asked me, how broad are you going to be? And so it's on leadership, and I really want to do this. So, it's nice. This is about the 6th touch point. I may have a chance to get it this year. Now, the truth be known, and they don't know this, is I'm not going to submit the proposal because I'd have to craft something on leadership for them. And I'm going to honor my focus on the market that I have. I don't want to go too broad. But the point is that you just never know when something, is going to come along. So keep the line open and always look to provide value. When you submit a proposal, don't email and say, hey, have you had a chance to look at the proposal yet? What do you think of the amendments? Try to provide something of value to them. If their topic is on conflict resolution, hey, I just found this interesting article on conflict resolution. Didn't know if anybody, just look to provide that value, that element. And we've heard this before. Come from a place of serving, and lots of great things happen. Come from a place where you're just looking after yourself, it gets lonely real fast.
Brilliant. Thank you for giving us first the mindset about it, not taking it personally, and for sharing that story of what happened to you as well. Because I think we've got to be real, like everyone gets rejections and knockbacks, but it's how you sort of nurture that. But the thing that I also want to raise is your bravery for saying, hey, my niche is this, and that's not in the direction of leadership. This is the difference, I think, between someone that's experienced and been doing business versus someone that's sort of just starting. Is we're going to say yes to everything. And this is where some confusion can set in. I guess why it's so important to have a niche.
Yeah, it is. And I must tell you, I'm glad this isn't a video thing, because I'm grabbing the table as I'm telling you that I'm saying no. So obviously I'm having a physiological reaction to myself doing this because it's something I want to do. But yeah, I used to teach at one of the universities here and a lot of other peripheral things. And the more I let go of that, the more it seemed the good things were coming from all the work I was able to put into my niche. So I would invest heavily in your niche for sure.
Thank you, Scott. Now, just to wrap it up, do you have any sort of advice for people that are starting their facilitation journey? Or perhaps we've been talking a lot about facilitation businesses. So how about someone that's starting their own facilitation business? What advice would you have for them?
The advice would be that you have to become a master of a lot of different things when you're starting your own business. And sometimes I don't think you realize all the things you have to do. And we know the accounting, the marketing and operations and back end stuff. So number one is outsource everything that you can. If you're not selling, you're doing a $20 or $30 an hour job. And I presume that if you want this to be a business, you're not charging $20 or $30 an hour for your own services. So when it comes to developing your own website, please pay whatever, in Canada, you can get a really good website for $2,000. Get someone else just to do it so that you can actually focus on the selling, the networking, the proposal writing, the things that will actually generate revenue for you. And so it really becomes a time management issue. Even if you enjoy the creative stuff, once you've made $1 million in a year, then allow yourself some creative time. But I'm a little bit of a stickler with my clients on this, that I don't want you doing $20 and $30 an hour jobs in your own business, even if you enjoy them, because someone's got to bring in the revenue, and most businesses fail from mismanagement. And usually the mismanagement is not enough attention on sales. The other piece too is if you've got some clients that you've already done great stuff with, please ask for active referrals. Okay, get active referrals, get video testimonials, those nice 15, 30-second pieces that can go onto a video reel of people showing how excited they are about what you've done. Get a mentor, somebody who, you can talk to about the business problems and the ups and downs. I'm not sure if any of your listeners have ever woken up and go, what am I doing? You're just sort of like, why did I take the sleep? I feel so unsure about it. Get some, a mentor or two, somebody you can call and just sort of talk through different aspects of your business. This is what I do is help entrepreneurs. It's what I've done for a while. So those are a few of the top things that I would have. And any cash flow forecast that you do, and I would do that sort of revenue forecasts, take your most realistic one and cut it in half.
Wow. Okay.
And that's probably where your reality will be. If you beat it, awesome. But at least you're prepared for what could hit you in terms of making sure that you can take care of your life the way that you need to take care of it.
That is so brilliant. And your first tip about outsourcing everything was directly targeted at me. So thank you, Scott.
It wasn't targeted at you.
It's like, yeah, he's right. He's right. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation. Just hearing your bravery and everything that you do and the decisions that you make and the questions that you ask yourself. If our listeners would love to find out more about what you do, they want your, just to know how to live a limitless life, where can we send them?
Have me come down and visit you folks there, because I understand that. So I'd much rather do that. But the website is scottarmstronglimitless.com, and that's Scott with 2 T's. And, if texting works all around the world and nothing makes me light up. I got a text today from Kenya, for people who I worked with maybe 8 or 9 years ago on that little journey I was telling you about, who wanted some resources on how to start their own businesses. And it just made me smile from ear to ear. So is it okay if I give a phone number? Do you want?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, 778-836-3343. And you'd have to use the Canada International code, which is 01. I don't have to use it all much, but it's in Canada.
Amazing, Scott. Thanks for sharing your number on a podcast. That's the first time we've had someone do that on this show. So,
well, I've got unlimited minutes apparently right now, so it's all good.
I'd much rather that too. It's so much easier than writing an email back because texts are just shorthand, right?
So here's the one last thing. I know you want to wrap up. Business tip for sales: pick up the phone. Don't be vanilla. Vanilla is not cool. Everybody does email, and it's a great way to be like everybody else. Pick up the phone. You'll be surprised the number of people who actually find it refreshing to talk to a real voice.
That's so true. Thanks again, Scott. Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Scott Armstrong this week. If you'd like to stay connected with the show, you can join the free community on Facebook called The Flip Chart. It's a ton of conversations, great inspiration and questions being asked on there. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around.